class once again. Today we are going to read the first chapter of Matilda. Before we start, I'd like to ask you a question. Have you ever had a dream that you would travel around the world, but the problem is you don't have money? Have you had wishes to meet new people and to see new worlds, new places, but the big problem is you don't have money? Well, if you have this problem, then we're going to read the first chapter, which will give you a kind of solution to that problem. Alright, so we're going to start the first chapter of the novel. The title of the first chapter is The Reader of Books. What does the title suggest? Well, surely it means the reader who loves reading, the reader who loves books. Now, as we discussed in the last class, that the central character of this novel is Matilda. So here, the reader of books, you can easily guess, is Matilda. Right. The book begins with giving us kind of information that most of the parents love their children and they want their children to be the best. And the narrator gives us three kinds of groups, or three kinds of parents. In the first group, the parents are like, they love their children, they think that their children are wonderful, even though the children is naughty, even though the children are disgusting. They think their children are wonderful. In the second group, the parents think that their child has some kind of genius or brilliance. Why? Because people praise their children. And that's why they think so. My child is great, is genius. In the third category, in the third group, the parents love to praise their children in front of others. And to the narrator, that's kind of twaddle. Now, what is twaddle? Twaddle is nonsense. So parents praise their children, and to the narrator, that kind of praise is actually twaddle, nonsense, talking nonsense. And he doesn't like this kind of parents because many children are, or some children are, naughty and disgusting. Right, so according to the narrator, most of the parents love their children, but he says there are few parents in the world who are totally different from most of the parents. How? He says that there are some parents, very tiny number of parents in the world, they actually don't appreciate their children. They don't actually see that their children are special, even though the child is brilliant, even though the child is intelligent. And the narrator gives us one example. And the example is Mr. and Mrs. Wormwood. These parents, they don't appreciate their children's brilliance. Now if you notice carefully, you will see the name actually suggests something. Wormwood. If we split the word into two, then you will find two words. Wormwood. What is a worm? Exactly. A tiny, thin creature. And woodworms are the insects that live in a tree or a plant. And what do the woodworms do? They destroy the growth of the trees or plants. They are harmful and dangerous. So if you look at the name, Mr. and Mrs. Wormwood, the name of these parents, you can easily recognize that these parents are not actually good for the growth of their children. They're actually harmful and dangerous at the same time for the growth of their children. So Mr. and Mrs. Wormwood, they have a son and a daughter. The son's name is Michael, and the daughter's name is Matilda. Now the boy is quite normal, but the problem with Matilda is she is an extraordinary girl. She is brilliant and she knows something amazing at her own age, at a very young age. But Matilda's parents are so blind, they're so busy with their jobs that they don't actually notice the brilliance, the great qualities of Matilda. Now, what are the brilliance or good qualities of Matilda that we're so praising about her? Well, first of all, when she was 1.5, she could speak perfectly like an adult. When she was 1.5. Generally, a baby, a 2-year-old baby, can't speak properly. A baby speaks maybe 3 or 4 words, or maybe 2 or 3 sentences. Right? Mama, give me some water, that's it. But Matilda could speak perfectly like an adult. That's something amazing. When she was only 1.5. When she was 3, she taught herself how to read. She learned to read on her own by just reading newspapers and magazines. And when she was 4, she could read fast like an adult. And in her house there was only one book, and the book's name is Easy Cooking. And she learned all the recipes of the book by heart. And now Matilda, at the age of 4, she wanted something more. And what could she do? Well, every afternoon, Matilda's parents left her in her house, in her room. The father went out to work, the mother went out to play bingo, and the brother was at school, so Matilda was left alone all by herself. One day, Matilda decided to go outside of the house. She went outside, and just a few blocks away, she found a public library. So, excuse me. So, she went to the library and she asked the librarian whether she could have some children's books. The librarian was surprised and amazed. A tiny little girl came to the library all by herself, asking for a book. So she was very happy. She gave her a book, and from then on, Matilda would go to the library every afternoon. She would toddle down to the library. What is toddle down? Well, the word is toddle down. Toddle down means to walk with short steps. To walk with short steps, like a baby, right? Like a baby. Going to the library, walking like a baby. That's what we call babies, toddlers, right? That's how they walk. So she would toddle down to the library, and she sat in a quiet corner, in a cozy corner of the library. What is cozy? Try to guess. She sat quietly in a cozy corner. Cozy means? It means warm and comfortable. So she would sat quietly by herself in a cozy corner, in a warm and comfortable corner, and she would devour one book after another. She would devour. What is devour? Try to guess. She would devour one book after another. Devour? One meaning of devour is to eat something quickly, especially when you're hungry. But the other meaning is to read something with great interest. So Matilda is devouring excuse me. Matilda is devouring one book after another. She is reading books with great attention. She's enjoying reading books. Now, after a while, after some days, she finished all the children's books. Now she wanted something more. So she went to the librarian again and she said, I want to read books that grown-ups read. The librarian, Mrs. Phelps, the librarian, she was stunned. What is stunned? Try to guess. When a tiny little girl came to you and asked for books for adults, you were stunned. So try to guess the meaning of stunned. Means amazed or surprised, right? So the librarian was amazed or surprised. She was stunned by seeing Matilda wanting to read books that grown-ups read. So, seeing no other way, she didn't actually want to discourage Matilda, the librarian. She gave Matilda a great book named Great Expectations, written by Charles Dickens. And within a few days, Matilda finished that book, and guess what? Without any sweat. She finished the book, and then she asked for more. And the librarian had to give Matilda a lot of books, large books, like the books Nicholas Nickleby by Charles Dickens, Oliver Twist by Charles Dickens, Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte, all these great books the librarian offered her. And then the librarian also informed Matilda that, do you know that you don't have to come to the library each and every day? You can borrow some books and you can take books home, and then after finishing the book, you can return the books. And Matilda was excited. She said, I want to do that. So Matilda collected a library card, and from then on, she would visit the library only once a week. And she would take out new books and return the old ones. And her small bedroom became her reading room. Her reading room was full of books. Books were scattered here and there. And then Matilda spent most of her time reading books. The books actually took her into new worlds. The books allowed Matilda to meet new people and amazing places. And with the help of these books, Matilda would visit Africa with Ernest Hemingway. She would visit India with Rudyard Kipling. And she traveled all over the world, just sitting in her little room in an English village. So the books allowed Matilda to travel the world without any money. Would you like to have a travel like Matilda? Well, I leave it up to you. You will decide what you're going to do. Would you travel the world without any money? Or would you wait for money and then you would travel the world? Right, so that's how this chapter ends. I have given you a worksheet to complete. When you will be home, you have to finish the worksheet. In your worksheet, you have a number of words. You have to make sentences with the words. And then you have fill in the blanks. And you have to finish some kind of sentences or quotes from the book. And then you have questions and answers. And finally, you have to write a short paragraph comparing your parents with Matilda's parents. And kindly read the second chapter. Alright? So that's all for today's lesson. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.